everyone. My name is Rochelle Innocent and I'm the founder and CEO of Project Purpose. Welcome to our channel. Our community is focused on fostering the intellectual and character development in children. We do this through our parent-child workshops that are focused on 4 themes: autonomy, self-efficacy, compassion, and self-concept, in order to cultivate grit, perseverance, and resilience in each child. And we are so thrilled to be offering one of the first of its kind, digital, virtual, and continuous learning environments, enabling parents and children to connect from all around the world. At Project Purpose, our overarching mandate is to renew and rebuild family, community, and relationships. Our different social media platforms provide us with an opportunity to have discussions and to create space for all topics that relate to family, community, and relationships with ourselves as well as with others, with a primary focus on mental health and education. More precisely, the ways that the institutions of mental health and education play a role and have played a role in our societies at large. These discussions and debates provide us with an opportunity to think critically about what needs to change within these structures for us to live up to our bold slogan: support, protect, and empower each child through youth-focused development, better known as leadership in juvenescence. We recognize that in valuing our children's leadership potential, this also translates as recreating and co-creating environments, both socially and politically, that will enable our children to thrive. For those of you who are particularly keen on the topic, we also write thought pieces every other Monday. We actually have a thought piece scheduled to drop this upcoming Monday, so definitely be sure to meander over to the website and check out our online content. Now, if it is the case that you're looking for a listening alternative, well, we're available wherever podcasts are playing, and we've provided you with access to a few links down below. Now, as is the convention, be sure to subscribe, hit that post notification bell so that you are aware of every time we post. And of course, if you like these conversations and you want to keep them going, like, comment, and share this segment. Let's get into it. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another segment here on Project Purpose. For those of you who are new, we cover topics that relate to mental health, mental wellness, and education on a week-by-week basis. And today's topic of discussion is education. On the conversation around education, I want to talk about the education around choice. And so the education around choice is something that we very rarely talk about explicitly, but I want to talk a little bit about the dynamic of choice and how you can orient yourself around the choices that you make outside of what has been imposed. And I say the word imposed very, very intentionally because we are raised in a climate and in a society where we think we have one of 2 choices. And it was really in my post-secondary education. I did a macroeconomics class, and in that macroeconomics class, I had a professor who really spoke about it very plainly in plain terms, and I'm going to try to explain it to you and then explain to you the implications of not owning your own choice beyond one of the 2 extremes or the 2 options we find or we feel are available within the societies that most of us, or the majority of us, especially those watching or having the privilege of watching YouTube, are exposed to. And so those choices that we think that we have by way of paradigms that we have to live in that really control our rules of engagement, our social norms, our decisions by way of gender roles or gender identities that control the paths that we take based on how we see ourselves fitting within these paradigms, or either the secular paradigm or the religious paradigm. And you find that the largest or the loudest voices in society are either very secular voices or they're very religious voices. And so we find that we have to make a choice, one of the other. And for those of you who are familiar, I was raised in a very, very conventional, very traditional, very strict religious and orthodox households where there's a lot of things that I was taught, that I was told about the secular world that were completely taboo, that were just not things that I would ever think or thought to engage in. And that's because I was raised with this very religious black and white lens about right and wrong, about good and bad, about evil, about all of these things and concepts that religion in and of itself taught from within its lens were things that weren't taken into consideration or weren't honored or weren't respected through the secular lens. And so I would see the world with this religious view, and I was very condemning. And I think that what ended up happening is I felt ill at ease with being so condemning with the way that I saw the people who weren't raised in the same environment around me. There was this inner voice that kind of asked myself, I would ask myself, well, who am I to be so condemning? And I remember there was this one year, and I think this was a really pivotal year, and it's like these small little moments that we don't think impact us, but they do. And I was raised in a tiny little town. I've been raised in tiny little towns my entire upbringing. I didn't move to a big city, which was Toronto, until my university years. And also really had the opportunity, especially in like middle school and high school, where we start to be a little bit more adventurous and wanting to challenge those limits and those boundaries. There was never a moment where I was in a school that was in the same town that I lived in. I always had to take like a bus that was at least a minimum 30-minute ride to my school. My parents did that strategically, so I couldn't navigate or couldn't decide to just up and go and hang out with friends without someone giving me a drive, without there being a chaperone. And so that was done very intentionally, just to be on top of like what I was doing on a day-to-day basis, even when they weren't home, because they knew that I was restricted because of the size of the town and the fact that everything you needed to drive to get anywhere. And because I didn't have my driver's license, they could control my whereabouts by maintaining distance in that sense. So I never really knew the kids from the neighborhoods that I grew up with. Not really, because all of my activities, all of my extracurriculars, everything that I did was always either in association with the religious group that I grew up in or with the school that I went to. The school was, again, always a town over. And because I was in French immersion, it was justifiable, and it was an exception made to the rule of having to go to the schools within your districts. And so with all of that being said, the point is that there was this boy on our bus, and his name was Joel, and I don't remember what religion he came in. And again, because it's a small town, like most people are religious in small towns, and I don't know what creates that phenomenon, but like most of my peers, whether they were in my school, which was a secular school, was a public school, or whether it was at my church, like a lot of people were religious. They had a religion that they associated with and that they identified to. And so this one individual, there wasn't a day that I rode this bus, and again, it was minimum 30 minutes, and I could have been longer, but I remember dreading this bus ride because throughout the entire bus ride, he would find someone to condemn and to tell, like, you're gonna burn in HE double hockey sticks, like you're gonna burn in hell. And so I thought that was just so inappropriate. And I was a child, I wasn't all that old at the time, but I just felt like it was just so inappropriate and just so like assuming and so like, you must think so highly of yourself to kind of point at someone else and tell them with confidence, with such assurity that they're burning in hell. And it would upset children, of course. Now, like as an adult thinking back, we're all kids, right? We're all sensitive to the words that people choose to use with us, but a lot of kids would feel like scared, would feel afraid because this person here who spoke with so much religious authority was telling them that they're going to burn in HE double hockey sticks. And I remember making a promise to myself that I would never be the kind of person who looked at someone, felt comfortable condemning them in that way. And that was actually the first of the break that I had with my religion, because in my religion there was a lot of lifestyle choices that were implicated within the religious practices. It wasn't just about faith and belief, it was about lifestyle. And I felt that there's a lot of those choices that I could adopt without it necessarily being within a religious lens. And so I started to think about, well, what about my point of view fits within this religion and doesn't, right? And I realized that in this class, this macroeconomics class, it's really about choice. And we're raised in a climate where we think we have one of two sets of choices. We have these choices that are built within this secular lens, which is like pop culture, like what's the cool thing to do, what are the trends to do, and so we conform to those norms, or the choices that are appropriate or justifiable within the religious lens. But what this professor positioned to us is we could adopt one of those two views, and in adopting one of those two views, there are decisions that we're making. We're relinquishing the autonomy involved with building our own choice schema, building our own choice metrics that are really choices that we find are better aligned with who we are as individuals. We're also limiting our growth, because our growth is going to be limited to the constructs that are these religious and these secular views. Both of them think in black and white, both of them are fairly resistant and intolerant to one another. And if we operate within either the secular lens or this religious lens, then we're limiting our ability to navigate, our ability to grow, because like we have defined the parameters of our own behavior and our own, belief systems and value systems. We're adopting beliefs and values that were given to us. And this is a form of control in and of itself, because then we are conditioning ourselves to align to expectations that are external to our own, rather than finding inner alignment and then aligning our choices and our values to our own expectations. And so what I recognized in this class is that I didn't have to feel this struggle, because I felt this disconnect with so many of the values and the positions and the rules with this religious lens. I didn't have to abandon all of my own personal values and beliefs and move over to the secular lens. I could abandon both and build my own view, and my own view could be what I felt would be supportive of my own growth and evolution, that was either from the religious pool or from the secular pool. Because again, these are attitudes, values, and beliefs. They're not necessarily right and wrong, and as you grow in life, you realize that there's nothing super clear cut about right and wrong, about good and bad. Like obviously there are certain actions that seem very straightforward, but a lot of the things in life that involve some form of ethics or some form of morality, they're gray. They exist on a spectrum. Like they're, it's clear in a certain context, but not so clear in another. And I realized that that choice paradigm that I was abandoning, I was not going to abandon to just adopt another education that starts at home that very rarely starts at home, because a lot of our parents and the people who raise us are also battling with the expectations of others. And so because they're trying to conform to those expectations, they're going to teach their children to conform to those expectations. There's no one to teach us to not conform to expectations outside or that are external to our own, but to figure out a way to find ourselves towards inner alignment and then align our choices to our alignment, to our own values and beliefs, to our own attitudes as they grow, as they shift, and as they evolve. And I think that that is something that a society built in one of the two constructs, either you fall within the religious pool or the secular pool, it's very threatening for you to figure out your own path. But I think that if we delve into the power of critical thinking, is the power of cultivating your own schema, your own paradigm, like what you think is good and wrong as it relates to you, as it relates to you in relation to others, as it relates to the society and the impact that you want to have. All of that are personal choices. They're not the kinds of choices that you want to offload on other people, and we find ourselves inadvertently offloading those choices because we're finding ourselves battling between one of these two paradigms, between the secular paradigm, which is more pop culture and more mainstream, or this religious paradigm, which is very restrictive, where we can find ourselves feeling very suppressed and very safe, maybe because the rules are so clear cut, but a lot of how we feel and a lot of our own ideals and our own attitudes we have to abandon. And so both of them require a certain level of personal abandon, and I don't believe in that. I believe that we need to figure out who we are, and in finding that inner alignment, figure out what choices best serve us and the communities that we partake in. And all of that are choices that we can own on our own. We don't need to have anyone imposing their beliefs, their attitudes, their thoughts on the ways of being on ourselves. And that's what Project Purpose is about. This is my way of giving back, because I found so much freedom in breaking away from arbitrary rules that governed my choices unnecessarily. And in finding that freedom, yes, there were people that I lost, there were communities I lost, there were situations and scenarios that I navigated differently through, because I was navigating from my own personal choice paradigm. I was figuring it out based on what I felt was in alignment with my values, and in finding inner alignment and finding peace and focusing on clarity, was able to move in a lot of ambiguity with a lot of grounding, right? Because it's hard to deal with uncertainty if you don't have like a clear-cut rule, if you don't have a clear-cut path, if you don't have guardrails. But I think that figuring out your own choice paradigm is really about finding that inner alignment when you don't have something super structured or super stable to fall back on. And so I think that critical thinking enables that. Critical thinking is what drives that, and critical thinking is one thing that I find that our society does a whole heck of a lot to keep us from being able to do. And we can't be informed, contributing citizens of society if we're not also given the tools to think critically. And part of that is figuring out, well, what do you believe? What do you think? Regardless of how people feel, regardless of the expectations, regardless of how many people will be disappointed, like how do you blaze your own path and do it unapologetically? And so that's what the conversation of today is. It's really the education that starts at home. Critical thinking is really the ability to make your own choices, make sound and informed choices, regardless of how other people feel about them. Choices that are in alignment with your values, with your beliefs, with your desires, whether they fall within the religious or the secular realm, because you're following a choice pattern that is figuring out and cultivating a lens that is just your own, that isn't religious, that isn't secular, that is your own, and that is in alignment with yourself and with your growth, with your path, with your journey towards finding your own purpose, and finding that sometimes the only barrier between us and our purpose are the rules that we're trying to conform to, that keep us from the decisions that would enable us to find that sort of freedom, mental and emotional liberation. So that's what I want to come in here and talk about, the education that starts at home, and talk a little bit anecdotally about my own path towards that inner alignment, and how this one class about market economics really being as a market of choice, right? It's a market of choices, and how there are certain people who benefit from choices that we make if we make a specific choice. They put a lot of investment behind us making a choice that benefits them, whether it is a choice that benefits us. And so we need to be the ones who govern, well, what choices am I going to make that benefit me and the collective, and not just choices that benefit some other who isn't really concerned about me and my well-being, and how those choices are going to impact me midterm, long-term, and they have more visibility on that oftentimes than you do. So think about that. Think about the power of your choice, and about to what extent you are relinquishing that choice, and how you can get that choice back, because choice is power, choice is energy in and of itself. You don't want to give that energy away frivolously. You want to make sure that you maintain and you own the power that exists within your choice by making the choices that make the most sense for you. That was the topic of discussion